My name's Roger Hall.
And how old are we, Roger?
54 years old.
Just a young fella, really.
Just a young guy, really.
First surfboard?
My first surfboard was a belly board, which my brother Chris had made. It came about, there was an old longboard, and I think it must have snapped in half. And he and Grant Efford took one half each and peeled the glass off and made a belly board each. And that's kind of how my surfboard building career got started, because my brother shaped this belly board. It was triple stringer. It was pretty cool. Yep. And I remember watching him glassing it in his bedroom. So then I realised that I could make surfboards in my bedroom. So my bedroom was my first factory.
You must have had a pretty patient mum to do that, was she?
I'm amazed when I think back how patient. I think my parents were just really encouraging to see me interested in getting into something.
Yeah, yeah.
Because for quite a while there I was shaping boards and glassing them in my bedroom.
Yeah, it's a pity more kids today, or parents today, aren't like that, isn't it, really? That's amazing. So where did you start surfing? At Ruakaka here, or?
Yeah, I caught my first wave just out here at the power station. My older brother Richard pushed me off on a wave. I was just lying down on his, it was actually a like a transition, about a 7.6 V bottom. It was a Dell.
Yeah. And
pushed me off, and he said, "Now stand up," and I jumped to my feet, and I stood up on my first wave. Yeah, that's so that was off to a good start.
Yeah, brilliant. So, what year do you think you started surfing? You were just a young guy then, weren't you?
Yeah. Well, we really got started. There was a gang of us, village kids, Tony Coons and Derek Rowlands and Michael Dunn, who we called Dunnybrush. And myself, and we all got, this is when we were at primary school, so it was in the late 60s I suppose, we got given those flutter boards.
Oh yeah, yeah.
Yeah, it was long before boogie boards came out.
Yeah.
And they were polystyrene, moulded polystyrene foam boards.
Is that where you got the sore chest?
And you used to get the real bad rash, so you'd either cover them in a I saw some people tied like hessian around them, yeah, or some sort of, you know, sock, and or actually wore a t-shirt, but so, we used to get bad rashes often.
So did you have leg ropes in those first boards that you had?
No, and even with our stand-up boards we didn't have leg ropes. And I remember when leg ropes first came out, we used to go to Wilkinson Sports and buy a length of, just a length of cord. Yeah. And I remember old Garth Marsland saying, what did we want it for? And we said we wanted it for a leg rope. He thought we were talking about milking cows and a cantankerous cow, and we needed to tie its leg up so it wouldn't kick us.
So you've talked a little bit how you got started making boards. What made you go into business for yourself? What did you leave school and not have a job, or did you were making boards while you were at school, I take it? Yeah,
I started making boards when I was 13, 1971. My oldest brother Richard had a little wide-backed, it was 5'2", a little wide-backed Bob Davies twin fin. Yeah. And he'd ordered a 5'10" Alan Burns model, single fin, so he had that coming. Yeah. So my mother and I went halves in the 5'2" twin fin, and I brought it off him for about, I can't remember actually, wasn't very much, but the day that I brought it off him, he borrowed it back to go surfing, and he had a little mini, and they all, him and Ian Cullen and Grant Efford and some of the boys, they all took off in the little mini, and they went down to Uratiti to go surfing. And when they got there was no surfboards on the roof, they'd all come off. So they had to backtrack, and it was all gravel roads back then, so they had to backtrack, and you know, there was a board in the bushes here, and another one over the fence in the paddock, and another one in the middle of the road. So he came back with my board, which was lovely resin tint, blue bottom and rails. It was all gravel rash and all dinged up. Yeah. And he handed me 2 tins of epoxy resin, and he says, well, it's high time we learned how to fix surfboards. So the day I bought the board, he borrowed it back. It fell off the roof of the car, got all dinged up. He gave it back to me with a tin of resin and said, you better learn how to fix things. So that's how my surfboard building started.
And it's 2012 and you're still making boards.
Trying not to fix things, but yeah, still making boards.
Yeah.
So of course, the moment I got sticky fingers and started fixing my own board, all my mates wanted their boards fixed, and it just sort of went.
And you teamed up with Colin Huntovich at that stage?
Yeah, that came a few years later.
Yeah.
What I started doing was scouring the neighbourhood for old longboards, because you could know, I mean, longboarding was well out of fashion.
So we can blame you for wrecking lots of old longboards.
I wrecked some beauties when I think back. I'd buy them for, you know, $20, $30, $40, something like that. Nobody wanted them, and stripped the glass off them. And I remember the first one I bought was, I'm pretty sure, in very good condition. And I got my brother's board, and I laid it on top of it, and I used it for a template, and I just freehand round it with a pencil.
Yeah.
And then my dad and I went over to the power station, into the carpenter's workshops one Sunday, and he guided it through the bandsaw, you know, cut out the plan shape, cut the rails off, and then I stripped the fiberglass off, and that's when I first discovered the itchies, the fiberglass itchies, by pulling the glass off. But I remember that the blank was super white, and you know, the glass wasn't discoloured or anything. And I shaped that board with the fin still on it. I went right from the very tail of the board with the fin still on it. So that was a bit of a mission. That was my first board. It's 5'4" it came out.
Favourite beach?
Well, I've surfed all over the place and travelled a bit, you know, a fair bit and whatnot. But I find myself, my favourite beach is the beach down here on a half decent day. That's the beach I grew up surfing and learning to surf. And
what's some of the more exotic places that you've surfed? I know you've travelled around, you've been to Hawaii, you've been to America. What, you know, must be one place you went and you just had fantastic surf.
The furthest corner that I travelled and found a wave, and it was a very, very good wave, probably where you'd least to expect it, was way, way up in the Irish Sea at the top of Wales.
Oh yeah.
And I would say 360 days of the year it would be flat as a lake. But I went with a guy, we were building surfboards there in Wales, and he says, check the weather map, and he says, right, we've got to go to this place, and this top secret place. I can't reveal the name of it. And off we went. Took us ages to get there, a whole afternoon, and it was absolutely dead flat.
Yeah.
But he knew exactly how to read the weather map, and when we woke up the next day, there was a pumping 4 to 6 foot swell, nobody there, offshore wind, and it was just perfect.
Yeah. And was that really cold water, or?
It was their summer, and it was a heat wave summer.
Yeah.
And I wore my steamer. Yeah. So it was kind of equivalent to winter here.
When you know, I know you surfed in Aussie and that, like, some places it's so crowded. We're probably pretty lucky in Northland. We can go to the beach, and on a morning there's probably only 2 or 3 or 4 people out, and I think that's a great thing. When you go to Aussie and there'd be daylight and there'd be 50 to 100 people. Yeah, yeah. So, but that's probably why the Aussies are good surfers. I don't know. What do you think about that?
It's very competitive over there. Very competitive, and I'm sure that's what sparks the whole thing off.
Yeah. Hawaii. You've surfed in Hawaii?
Yeah, I've surfed in Hawaii. I've been to Hawaii a few times, and the first time I went was in 1979, and then I went back in 80 and 82, and then 89,
Favourite wave there that you've surfed there?
Well, I had a real nice period of time in 1980 and 82. I surfed at Ala Moana quite a bit.
Yeah. And
just around those reefs, because I was there in the summertime. So just around those reefs, you know, Kaisers and number 3s and all up around there. And I mean, it wasn't easy to get a wave. Yeah. But when you got one, when you finally got one, it was really nice waves. Yeah. Really nice waves.
Favourite New Zealand surf trip? Where have you been? Oh, I know where your favourite place is, but I'm going to ask favourite other place out of Northland to go surfing in New Zealand.
I love going down to little spots just south of Gisborne.
Yeah. And you get waves there quite regularly?
That's my favourite.
Yeah.
Never lets me down.
Yeah, yeah. Brilliant. Funniest thing you've ever seen out surfing, on the way surfing? You must have a funny story to tell that you've seen something absolutely stupid out there on the water, or? Good
friend of mine, Tony Derbyshire, turning up to Lang's Beach one evening in the middle of winter and forgot his wetsuit. So he paddled out. He wasn't completely naked. He had his undies on, but he was blue and purple.
Surf accidents, have you had any bad accidents while you've been surfing? I don't know why I asked this question, but...
Yeah, I nearly drowned once in about 12 inches of water, actually, the way it panned out. It was fairly embarrassing because the person that I'd taken surfing that day was Peter McCabe, and Peter McCabe's, you know, a bit of a legendary surfer that's obviously pretty handy, sort of a waterman. And anyway, we went out to Mangawai Bar one day, and it was just him and I out there. It was quite nice waves, and I hadn't been surfing much because the longboard shop in Albany was about to open, and we'd been absolutely flat out making all the boards for it. And I think I'd had a broken arm or something as well. And anyway, so I was first surf out in the water for a while, and I was a bit rusty, but I was having a good time, and I was getting some good waves. And then this set wave came, and it was a bit bigger than anything else that had come through, and I thought, right, this is going to be a barrel, you know. And I think the fact that Peter McCabe was paddling out, I might have got a bit cocky. And I dropped down the wave, and I delayed my bottom turn because it looked like it was just going to be a perfect setup. So I delayed my bottom turn, but of course, this wave being a little bit bigger, hit the shallow sand bottom and just jacked that a little bit quicker. And I was just a little bit slow coming off the bottom, and the lip came over and just clipped the rail of my board as I came around to pull up into the tube. And it was an explosion basically, and the board and I went flying up in the air. And when I came down, the board was upside down, and I landed on my bum on the fins, and actually punched a couple of the fins right through the deck of the board. And I just went off my natural instincts, and I thought, right, I've got to get straight back onto the board, because I had this pain that I'd never felt anything like it. And I got straight back onto the board, and I lay there, and one of my arms didn't feel, you know, wasn't really there, and I wasn't too sure what was going on. I thought, shit, I'm in trouble here. So I held my arm up for Pete to see, and he was looking, and he saw me hold my arm up, and he thought, oh yeah, he's all right. So I was, you know, lying on my board, drifting around, trying to get out of the impact zone with one hand, paddling like that, going around in circles, and he thought I was sweet, so he forgot about me and carried on surfing. He was having a great time. And I slowly, the waves pushed me in, I washed in, and I ended up right in the shallows, on the wrong side of the bar, lying on my board, and there was just this rip, just slowly sucking me towards the mouth, and the tide was going out. So I thought, this isn't good. I'm going to end up getting sucked back out through the impact zone again. So I sort of slid off my board and just let my knees dig into the sand, and I just sat there, you know, like on my knees, holding onto my board, looking up at all the houses, thinking there's got to be somebody there having a cup of coffee. That's nosy old guy looking out through his binoculars or whatever, watching, you know. And I must have passed out because I got hypothermia. It was, you know, offshore wind blowing. And well, I woke up again. I was lying on the beach, and I sort of looked around. I had a really bad pain in my back, and I saw Peter McCabe running across the top of the water. He'd finished his surf, and he'd come in, had no idea that anything was wrong, thought he'd seen me up, you know, in the car park, so he just kept on surfing. But then when he was coming in, he saw me lying on the beach, and he just ran across the water, literally. So I got rescued by Peter McCabe this day and ended up getting a hospital ambulance ride into town. They called the helicopter to come and get me, but somebody had a car accident, which is more important. So they turned the helicopter back, and I had to wait for funnily enough, the ambulance came from the village here, so it was my local ambulance, came all the way up to Mangawai and took me in the hospital.
I know for years that you've done a lot of different designs, and you've probably been a leader in New Zealand in longboard designs and that, but for general surfboard design, where can you see that going in the future? Is it going to stay similar, or are we going to have some weirdo design coming out, or what are your thoughts about the future of surfing?
I put my money on the weirdo, pretty much. I think it's a very exciting time in surfing and surfboard building at the moment, because there's a real open-minded kind of a counterculture going on, and it's really digging up a lot of interesting things, and there's a lot of really off-the-wall, people are coming from, you know, left, right and centre, all sorts of different things are being explored. But my bet for the future surfboard is that they will have flexible tails. Surfboards will have flexible tails for sure.
Mm.
And I think surfboards will have a more user-friendly combination of, paddle ability. They'll have more volume in them.
Yeah.
And they'll be a better all-round surfboard with flexible tails.
That's brilliant. Yeah, and they've got children, so when the Halls go surfing and you're there at the beach with your whole family, we can't get a wave. So how many of the family all surf in total? There's quite a few of you in there.
Yeah, well, they all turn up at once. There's my two brothers, and Chris has got two sons and a daughter that surf, and Richard's got his oldest boy surfs, and then he's got kids. So he's got a couple of little ones coming up. So there's quite a swag of us there.
Better watch out for you guys. I think that's brilliant. I don't know what else to ask you at this stage.
I could tell you a story because
I'd love to hear a story.
I thought about this when I was in the shower this morning, actually, because I thought, oh, that's right, Laurie's coming. I better think of some stories. And I was thinking about the very beginning and with the flutterboards. Yep. And because we kind of thought we were pretty hot shot flutterboard riders, and we'd go out when it was big and stormy and that kind of thing, and we were out there this one day, and it was the biggest day I can remember, howling onshore, massive storm, and so we're all out there catching waves and yahooing, and it was getting bigger and bigger, and meaner and meaner, and we started getting a bit uncomfortable, so we decided to catch one in, and we all ended up in on the beach, or we all made it, just the sand sort of thing, it wasn't anything like Hawaii or whatever, but we thought it was pretty epic. But then we noticed that Dunnybrush hadn't made it in. So here's Dunnybrush, and he's stuck way out the back. And I got quite worried for him. And at that stage there was a surf club in the sand dunes down here, because we'd had a drowning. Yeah. So the village had rallied around and put in their own surf club. So I thought, well, this is serious, Dunnybrush is stuck out there, So I pushed the alarm, which basically rang right through the whole village, and the whole village turned up down onto the beach to see what was going on. And so here's Dunnybrush out there on his own, these huge waves, and the whole village is lined up on the beach. And old Dunnybrush looks in, he sees all these people on the beach, and he thinks, oh, I wonder what's going on the beach. So he catches this huge wave to come in purely just to see what's going on, and everybody's standing on the beach thinking he was drowning. So he just comes walking up the beach nonchalantly, oh, what's going on? And of course, I was the idiot that embarrassed him by telling everybody that he was in trouble.
Better to be safe than sure.
Well, his dad did come down and thank me afterwards, but I was a bit sheepish for a while.
About a year ago, I can remember we had a killer whale stuck out here, and I know it was stuck in the sand. You guys went out and rescued that. Were you there that day when that? What was that like, pushing that whale back out? Yeah, well, that was interesting, because I actually had a film crew staying at my house because they were here filming the Sowen movie, and I got a call from Mark Cunningham to say that there was an orca stranded, and actually my next door neighbour, who's retired, and a couple of his cronies, they quite often go for a swim, and they sit up on the bench seat in their Speedos, and they just happened to be sitting up there in the Speedos, and they saw this massive big fin coming from way out, and it came straight in, and they saw it suddenly turn, and it beached itself. So they all jumped in, and because it had its flipper stuck underneath it. Oh, yeah. So they jumped in and kind of managed to get it upright, and then they all got tuckered out and too cold and whatnot, so they bailed and went home and had hot baths and called the orca lady, I think. Yeah. So when I went down to have a look, there was just a whole lot of people standing there looking, and we waited for the orca lady, and luckily the tide was coming in, and we all got out there and helped get it going again. It was quite interesting to be sort of told what to do and what not to do, and to be that close with one of those big beasts, and to be able to help it. Yeah. Yeah. So, you ever surfed? You've been surfing, orcas come along, and you stayed out there? And Colin Unkovich and I were surfing at Waipu Cove once. Yeah. And it was middle of winter, and I remember we'd had a few surfs that day, and we thought, oh, let's just go out for one more quick surf. So, and our wetsuits were wet, so we thought, oh, we'll just put on our spring suits, which were dry. And so we're sitting out there, freezing our buns off basically. The surf wasn't that good, and it was mostly closing out. So we're sitting there waiting for a peeler, and next minute we saw this fin. Wow,
then the fin kept coming out of the water, and it got bigger and bigger, and I swear it was about 3 foot out of the water. And we looked at it, and we looked at each other, and we just turned around and took off on this, the first closeout we could find, and we belly boarded all the way to the beach. Because back then they were called killer whales.
Yeah, yeah.
They weren't called orcas. No. And as far as we were concerned, they killed people.
That's what you're told to believe.
Yeah, and we certainly did believe it.
Well, Rod, thanks very much, mate. That's brilliant.
No problem.